Okay, so we're going to get started regarding the issue of Pesach. We have to finish some odds and ends about the Haggadah and Kashrut, all kinds of things. A lot more to cover, Baruch Hashem. So let's talk a little bit about the issue of Kashrut, right? What's allowed on Pesach, what's not allowed on Pesach. So the truth is, right, that a person on Pesach has to be careful to buy only things, right, which don't have any, right, they have a hechsher, they have a stamp, right, that says that it's kosher for Passover. In general, this is the way it has to be done, because otherwise, how do you know all these ingredients, what they are not, right? You don't know what's in there. So the only way to make sure that there's no chametz in the product is that it should have a stamp, kashrut, right, of a hashgacha. This is the idea, right? That's the only way to do it. So, but the truth is, right, there are certain products that a person can buy that do not really need the hashgacha. They don't really need supervision. Mm-hmm. If a person is not sure what needs and what doesn't need, so what he should do is, go to a rabbi in private session, go to him and ask him, does this need hashgacha? Does this need hashgacha? Does this need to be kosher for Passover? This thing, that, whatever, all these kinds of things. Like, for instance, a person asked me today, right? What about if I buy some canned, vegetables, like tomato sauce, tomato paste, things like this? Does that really need to be kosher for Passover? So the truth is, right, according to halacha, there are some customs, by the way. Ashkenazim are a little bit more stringent regarding these things. But when it comes to the bare bones halacha, the truth is, right, that something which is a can of food, which just has very simple ingredients.
Yeah.
Like, just tomatoes, water, and salt. Right? So, these things don't really require supervision, for Passover. Okay. Why is that? Because there's actually a rule in America. There's a law about this. Regarding what? Regarding how many ingredients does a person have to show in the products that he sells. Company, right? Does he have to tell every ingredient? Does he have to reveal every ingredient that's in the food, or can he also hide some things, and tuck them under the rug? That's the question, right? So the truth is, right, there's a law in America. America is a very organized country. It's very pretty straightforward. Law and order, there's a law and order country. So what does that mean? There is a law here in America that you cannot make a product and not divulge the ingredients. You have to divulge everything. You have to tell people, this is what it has this, has that, has that. You can't hide anything in America, right? There used to be a rule, by the way, in America. The law changed many years ago, about 20 years ago or so. They changed the law. At that time, what happened was, right, that there was a rule like this: if it's under 2% of the ingredients, you don't have to show those ingredients. Mm-hmm. The whole sum of the product.
I see.
If it's under 2%, you don't have to show. So if it's 1%, you don't have to show. If it's 0.5%, you don't have to show. 0.5%, you don't have to show. That's the idea.
Yeah.
So what happened was, right, the Americans changed this law. The reason why they changed it, by the way, one of the reasons is because what? Because people now are very particular about what they eat. You know how it is today, right? People want this, they want vegan, they want a vegetarian, right? They don't want milk products in there, right? They don't eat lactose intolerance and all kinds of things, right? This intolerance and that intolerance, right? Vegetarian, don't eat meat, don't eat that, don't eat this, don't eat that, right? They want this, all kinds of things. Everybody has their own, and they also have allergies, by the way, all kinds of symptoms they have on their body. Sometimes they break out. Recently, right, the peanut butter thing has been, become a big issue, right? That peanut butter, some people have allergy to that. So therefore now the rule is like this, right, that in the schools, they don't bring peanut butter anymore, right, to serve. They used to, in the old days, peanut butter was the big staple in schools, for lunch to serve to the kids. When they don't have what to eat, whatever, they don't have one of those days. So they used to bring peanut butter. Now they don't bring anymore, right, peanuts. Why? Because there are a lot of people who are allergic to it, so therefore they leave it out. So therefore, things like this, right, if you today make a product, just like business-wise, I'm talking about kashrut right now, right? If you make a product as a producer and you don't divulge the ingredients, what happens is you will get lawsuits, you will get sued. Why is that? Because somebody's going to come out and say, it doesn't say that it has this ingredient, right? And I don't eat that. I'm allergic to that, right? So you get a $10 million lawsuit. And you know how it is, right? They win these lawsuits also. So the manufacturers are very afraid of that, right? There's a fear regarding all these things. So therefore, the manufacturers today are scared stiff about producing anything without divulging the ingredients, all the ingredients. Because there's always going to be somebody complaining, why didn't you tell me it had this? Why didn't you tell me it had that? All these things, right? So therefore, right, in Kashrut, we actually trust this concept. Why is that? Why do we trust? The truth is, right, that when it comes to reliability, a goy, we don't trust a goy. What does that mean? That we don't assume that he's honest or, whatever. They lie all the time, In other words, if it wasn't for the fact that they had a fear of losing money, losing their business, they would lie. That's the assumption. Yeah. So the only thing that prevents them from lying is because they're afraid of, losing money, getting a lawsuit, being fined by the government, like closing down the business, all kinds of statutes and fines and all kinds of things. So this is the reason why actually, right, a person today, if he knows how to read the ingredients and he knows what they are, because sometimes people don't know what they are, there are certain ingredients, like some word from outer space, from Mars, you know what this thing is. You never heard of this thing before in your life, so you don't know where it comes from. So a person has to research, these things. So that's why, right, a person, if he has a question regarding these things, he should ask a rabbi, if he's not sure what's in this thing, if it's kosher, not kosher for Passover. But the truth is, but in halacha, the bare bones halacha is that you don't really need the supervision for many of these foods, which are very simple, like just tomatoes and water and salt. We don't have any problem with that because the conditions of the plant are usually very clean today. The plants are very clean and very hygienic, and they wash everything, and everything is very super. Your grandmother would be proud of these people, right? The way they're making these things today. So the truth is, right, that therefore these things we don't need to have a special hechsher, for things like, let's say, just oil, salt, or sugar, these basic items, vegetables, things like this. What's in the vegetables, right? We don't have any assumptions that people are putting all kinds of things in there. So this, this makes life a little bit easier in the sense that a person, can go to the store and buy, whatever he needs to buy. So he can buy whatever he needs to buy, and right, he doesn't have to buy everything, kosher for Passover. There are certain things which don't need kashrut. But the truth is, right, the Ashkenazim are more machmir. They're more stringent about that. The Ashkenazim are super stringent on Pesach. So for them, it's like to buy something which has no supervision is really something like a big no-no by them. It's like their custom is not to buy things like this, unless it's like a pressing case where there's no choice or whatever. There's no other, whatever. But in general, what they do is, right, they only buy things which are especially made for Pesach, a special run that they make for Pesach.
Sure.
There's also a different issue there, which is that what sometimes, by the way, you find. I just got asked a question about this recently, about 2 days ago, by somebody, right, who lives in the neighborhood here, one of the local people. Question is like this, right? You buy a certain product, right, and it has OU there, so it's kosher. But it says D, right? OUD. So D means dairy. That's what it means. That means that there should be some dairy product in there. Milk, cheese, whatever it is, right? Some cream, whatever, God knows, or butter, whatever, right? All kinds of things like this. So that means that if this is like, let's say, a cookie, whatever, or cake, you can't have that, for dessert after meat, right? You have to wait 6 hours. So you can't have that. So if it's dairy, you can't have it for dessert after meat. So people come and ask me, sometimes this lady asked me the other day, what about if the product has OUD, right? That means it says it's dairy. But when you really look at it, right, the ingredients, there's no dairy ingredients over there. Nothing dairy over there, right? So how can that be, right? On the one hand, it says it's dairy, but the ingredients don't say anything dairy, right? So the truth is that sometimes people don't know there are certain, right, ingredients which are dairy, and they don't know what they are, so they don't know how to identify them. But if the ingredients are very simple, right? So then, what should be the problem, right? I can know I don't identify these things. I know what they are, right? So she asked me, right, am I allowed to have this for dessert after meat? Because I don't see any dairy ingredients in there, but it says OUD. So my answer was yes, you can have it for dessert. What's the reason? The reason is because the OU has a policy like this, right? That sometimes they put dairy sign, on something which is really not dairy. So well, then why they put it? Why they want to give you a hard time? Right? No, that's not the idea. The idea is like this, right? That it's made in a plant which has dairy products also being made there, produced there. What does that mean? So what happens is that some of these plants, right, they're using like time sharing. Like Monday they're making this product, and then Tuesday they're making a different product. One factory, but they're making all kinds of products there. They're making beans. They're making whatever, some kind of cake, cookies. They're making a lot of things over there. They're using one plant for all these things. So what happens is, right, that sometimes the plant is used for one day for meat, and then the next day that same plant is used for dairy, or for parv, something which has no meat, something which is not meat and not dairy. So the question is like this, right? The reason why the OU now puts a D on these products, you know why? Because they're afraid maybe there was some remnants left over from the run, the former run that they did in the plant. Maybe there was some remnants left over from the meat that got left in the plant, right, in the machines, and it's going now into the other product, which is not meat, right? So therefore they put like a sign on that, right, to show you this has dairy, right? This has meat, this has something in there. But the real truth is, right, that this product itself doesn't have any dairy. But the run that they did before, the product that they put the day before, had dairy. So therefore they put dairy to warn you, right, that maybe there are some remnants left over from that, right? But the truth is, according to halakha, though, this is not the way it works, right? Because the OU, is a company which has, a lot of safeguards. They have a lot of rules, regulations that they have in the company. And one of the rules is like this, right? If it's made on a plant that has dairy, even though this food has no dairy, they have to put a dairy sign on it, right? That's their rules. That's their regulations. But the truth is, according to halakha, it's not like that. Why is that? I'll explain to you right? What's the reason why? Because even though they made a run before, they made the run of this food, they made a run of different food over there, same plant, and that one had dairy. Nevertheless, there's two reasons why you don't need to consider that dairy, this food. One reason is because there's a law regarding that, right? That the plant has to be washed and cleaned before you start the next run. There's a rule like that in America. If you're producing two different products, before you produce the other product, you must clean first the whole assembly line there. The whole plant. You have the machines have to be cleaned. So therefore, right, they do clean it. So the chances of being remnants left over are not really very high after they do a thorough cleaning of the whole system there. That's number one, right? But even if there is something left over, by the way, let's say, nobody's perfect, right? Sometimes there could be something left over. So then what, right? Then what do we say there? So we say, right, there's a rule in halakha which is called batel b'shishim. You know what that means? That if the dairy ingredient is a very small amount, and it's less than 1/60th of the whole food product, so it gets nullified in the food product. So it's as if like it's not there. You know what I mean? This is the rule in halakha. Halakha says, right, that if that ingredient is less than 1/60th, it's like we don't have that ingredient. So it gets nullified, and therefore the food is not considered to be dairy. So therefore, right, in cases like this, where the plant is producing two different foods, and we have first one, this one, and then we have the other one, we're not really concerned according to halakha anyway, right? We're not concerned. I'm not talking about the rules of the OU. This is a different story, right? But according to halakha, we're not concerned about the remnant that got left over, maybe possibly from the other run. And by the way, you see today how the factories that are making foods, producers, are very scared about this. You know how scared they are? That they divulge even ingredients that are really not in the food itself. But they divulge things which are used in the machine to make other foods over there. They even put those things. Make contain, is make contain. What do you mean make contain? Either it does or it doesn't. What do you mean?
Right.
Make contain. You've seen that, right? Yeah, you wonder what that means, right?
Yeah.
So make contain means that, right, in a different run, we did a different, and it may contain something from there. You know what I mean? This is the idea.
They don't even know what the hell they're doing.
Right. So, but in halakha we don't care about that. Because it gets nullified. So therefore, the same thing applies to Pesach, right? If this product was made before Pesach, so we don't have any problem, right? Whatever was there got nullified. The truth is, right, there's a rule. There's a rule in Pesach. You know what the rule says? That even if it's something very small amount, it doesn't get nullified on Pesach. Meaning what? If a little bit of chametz got mixed in with some matzah or whatever, if it got mixed in during Pesach, it doesn't get nullified. But if you know why, because the rabbis added a special stringency over there for Pesach. Pesach is very very stringent. But when it comes to before Pesach, before the holiday came in, which this year comes in on Shabbat, right? Friday night. That's when it comes in. If the dish was made before that time, so then it does get nullified because it's still not Pesach yet, right? And therefore, a person who ate such a thing like that is considered to be okay. That's the idea, right? There's always this funny story that the Rabbi Al Shalom Moreno Rabbeinu Maran used to tell us like almost every year this story. Can you open the door there? They're very security happy, these people. One more. Very good. Open.
Oh, John, what's up? You have to hear by yourself? Yeah. No, I gotta go. The left is open. Whenever you're ready. Come on. That's some in. It's all right.
Leave it open. So, okay. So, as we said, right, that here regarding Pesach, things which are made on Pesach, they don't get nullified. But things which are made before Pesach, they do get nullified. So therefore, these products which you're buying in the store, obviously they're not being made on Pesach. They're made before, right? They're staying there on the shelf for quite a while before you buy it, right? So therefore, right, there's no concern regarding these things. So even if something got mixed in over there, it gets nullified before Pesach, and therefore it's all kosher and clean. And this is the reason why we're not so particular about these issues, right? Regarding these things. So a person can buy these simple foods like this, simple things, canned vegetables, things like this. We don't have any chametz in there, very simple ingredients. This, 1, 2, 3, right? Whatever. That's not really right. There's no issue with these things. So a person can rest easy, right, when it comes to these things. So what does a person really have to be careful about more, right? He has to be more careful about things which are, like chametz, prone to have chametz in there, things like this, right? Cookies, cakes, all kinds of things like this, right? Or all kinds of foods which they put in all kinds of chametz derivatives in there. But the truth is, right, that there's also another. If we're talking about this, right, let's talk about it a little bit more. Another interesting thing regarding this, right, is like this: that there's a rule like this in halakha. It says, right, that let's say a pot was used to make meat, right? Okay, so let's say, right, you bought chinkali, right, from Shalva, whatever. You never get it. Never comes on time. But
it's been 2 months.
Right, 2 months already. So anyway, right, you buy chinkali, you cook it in the pot. So what happens is that now that pot absorbs the taste of the meat.
Sure.
Inside. So now you're not allowed to make with that pot something which is dairy. Because the taste of the food is absorbed in there.
Even after you wash it?
Right, even after you wash it, right. Yeah, that's the idea. That's why, right, in the kosher homes, you have, right, separate, right, meat and dairy, right, separate. Everything is separate. The pots, the pans, right, all these things are separate. So here also, right, the idea is if you make chinkali in one pot, so now, right, or you make some kind of a roast or whatever, aliyah, whatever it is, God knows, right, whatever it is, you have to now, right, not use that for dairy, right? The question is like this: what about if a person? The same thing applies for chametz, by the way. What does that mean? That if a person, right, as we said, he made chinkali in the pot, right? Chinkali is chametz because it's got dough,
Sure.
So it's chametz, whatever. Chametz gamor, it's real chametz, right? So let's say a person made chinkali, dumplings, whatever they call it in the Yiddish, they call it kreplach, whatever. Same idea. These are all the same variations of the same idea, right? Chinkali is better though, tastes better, obviously.
Correct.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Right. So they can't compare to the Georgians.
No,
they can't compare. So anyway, right, the point is, right, that now, let's say that pot that I made use for chinkali, I can't use that for Pesach because the taste of the dough is absorbed inside the walls. But the interesting thing is like this, right? That according to the Torah, even though the taste is absorbed in the walls, what happens is that after 24 hours, the taste spoils. It rots, basically. So then, once it rots, it's okay now, according to the Torah, to use that pot. Why is it okay? Because now it's giving you a bad taste, like a spoiled taste. So that we don't care about. We only care about when the taste is improving the food. But if it's making the food worse, it's making it, taste worse. So then we don't care about that. That's not considered to be a problem.
I see.
But the rabbis anyway made a decree regarding that, right? That nevertheless, even though 24 hours passed by, right? They did pass by already. Nevertheless, you should not use that pot until you first kasher it, right? In other words, you do like hagalah, which is like you put it into boiling water, things like this, right? We're too, we don't like to do these kinds of things. We don't have enough time. We're busy, whatever. So that's why the people who don't want to get involved with these things, making hagalah kashrut to kasher their pots and pans, what they do is that you have separate ones for Pesach, they have separate ones for dairy, separate ones for meat, right? Everything is separate. So this way it makes life easier, right? You don't have to kasher anything, you don't have to do any work, right? Just bring it out of the closet, right? And use it, right? That's makes life much easier, you know what I mean? So, but interesting things like this, right? Okay, so a person really should not use his pot for Pesach that he made chikali, right, in their dumplings, whatever, right, the kreplach, unless he first kashers it, right? But what about now like this, right? We said, what about if he didn't kasher it? He forgot, forgot to kasher it. So now, right, he came and made a dish for Pesach. Made like a nice chicken dish, chachubili, He made nice chicken dish, and all of a sudden he said, "Oh my God, I didn't even kasher this dish, right? Out of this pot. It's not kosher for Passover, this pot." So the question is now like this, right? Are you allowed to use that food, or you have to throw it away? What should you do? Right now Pesach is coming, so everything has to be kosher for Passover. So what are you going to do with that now, right? You have to throw it out. It's got the taste of the chinkali in there, right? Of dumplings. So what's the halacha, right? The truth is, right, there's a story like this that the Rabbi Shalom brought down. He always told us the story every year, just to make the point. Like this was like a classic, There's classics. In stories also there's classics. You know what I mean? So this was a classic story. What was the story? That one day he says, I was coming out of the yeshiva. I was learning there, studying there in the yeshiva, and the Bet Knesset, right in the shul. So what happened was that he sees this lady coming out holding a pot, and she's like crying, like that lady we talked about before. She was also crying, right? This lady. So what was she crying about, right? What's her gripe, right? So the rabbi asks the lady, right? Lady, what's with you? Mrs., what's with you? What are you crying about? What happened? What, somebody passed away? What happened? What's there to cry about? So she says, no. He says, no. I just, what happened was that I used, I made a dish for Pesach, and I'm supposed to give it to the family, to my husband and everything. And then I remembered that, I used the pot which was not for Pesach, right? So she says, now I went to the rabbi, she says, of the neighborhood over here, and he told me that you have to throw everything in the garbage, kabagdo, not kosher for Passover, right? So the rabbi asked her, like, how did you make this? But what happened, So she explained everything, just like we said. So the rabbi tells the lady, she says, don't worry. He says, no, you don't have to throw it away. He says, food. He says, you can eat this food, right? No problem. Don't throw it away. Give it to your father. Give it to your husband. Let him eat it. What's the problem? But she says, but this rabbi that I went to, he told me that you have to throw it in the garbage. So the rabbi answered her. He says, this rabbi you went to, he's Ashkenazi. This rabbi, he's not Sephardi, right? So he says that's something else. This Ashkenazim don't eat this kind of thing. They have a stringency, the Ashkenazim, that they don't eat food that was made in a pot like that. Even after the fact that it was made, they throw it away. Why is that? Even though the taste spoils after 24 hours, nevertheless they throw it away anyway. That's what they do, right? Ashkenazim. But we Sfaradim don't do that, right? We go according to the Shulchan Aruch, according to the bare bones halacha, which says that if a person made a dish in this kind of a pot, he's allowed to eat it on Passover. Why is that? Because we said, right, the taste already spoiled in there. You really were not supposed to use that pot, right, until you kashered it. But since you forgot, right, and since the taste is spoiled, taste of there is spoiled, so therefore you're allowed to eat it. So the rabbi tells the lady, he says, don't worry. He says, don't throw the food away. She says, but the rabbi told me. He says, don't worry. The rabbi, he probably thought that you were Ashkenazi lady, but she didn't know you're Persian, Persian lady, Iranian, She didn't know that because you have blonde hair, whatever. So he thought that you were Ashkenazi. I says, it's this thing. I says, you know what? He says, if you don't believe me, the rabbi tells her, I'll eat it myself. He says, give me. I said, I'll eat it right now. If you don't believe. If you don't believe me. He says, okay, I believe you. So she went, and whatever. So the rabbi always brought this story every year, right, just to bear out the fact that we Sfaradim don't do like the Ashkenazim, right? The Ashkenazim have a lot of stringencies on Pesach. As we said, right, regarding the issue of eating foods which don't have a special right extra for Passover, they don't eat. as we said, right, regarding the pot like this, right, they don't eat things like that, which were made like that, even after the fact, even though it was done by mistake. All kinds of things like this, right, they don't do. But we actually, right, these things we do, right? So for us, it's a little bit different. You know what I mean? So what are we talking about? We're talking about when he made a mistake, right? He already after the fact that he did it, he's allowed to eat it. That's it, right? But in the beginning, right, preferably you shouldn't do that. Why? Because the halacha says you have to first kasher the pot. You know what I mean? So that's the idea. So we're more lenient on Passover, you know, regarding these things. We're not so stringent about these things. That makes life, by the way, more livable. You know, a person can enjoy a little bit more. Passover. It doesn't have to be so stringent, right? Also, we mentioned, right, the issue of eating rice on Passover. Ashkenazim don't eat rice, you know, they don't eat legumes, they don't eat corn, they don't eat peas, they don't eat, right, hummus, trina, you know, all, but the Sephardim eat all these things. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So again, right, we have a much better situation because the rice is almost like, you know, it's very soft, it's nice, it's good on the stomach, you know, so it makes you feel better when you eat something like that on Pesach. It's puffed up, it's puffy, you know, so it makes you feel like it's something like almost like, you know, almost like chametz, you know, something like which can take the place of chametz, whatever. So the Sephardim have an easier time when it comes to, but the Ashkenazim, when it comes to them, they're very stringent, you know, they don't, any of these leniencies they don't take.
Is it because of the reasoning that the Mashgiach and Hapizga told me when I asked them that? Like, why are you guys, you know, why are you open today?
Yeah.
You know, we don't eat meat. Okay, I gonna tell you the reason. Because the Ashkenazim, they suffer in life so much, we try to suffer, you know, with the rules also.
Well, you know,
That's what it told.
Yeah, it's kind of like a simplistic way of looking at it, you know, whatever. But you know, the idea is that the truth is that they are really much more stringent when it comes to Pesach, especially, right? Also, in the rest of the halacha as well. There's more stringent in most cases.
Do you keep
you know?
that at home?
What?
Back in Israel, your wife's ways?
What does that mean?
Or
no, so the halacha is like this: right? When a person gets married,
yes,
the wife has to adopt the customs of the man,
I see.
husband. You know?
Yes.
That's the way it is.
I remember after you got married, somebody asked you, Mike, which way are you going to go?
Yeah.
Forget that Ashkenazi nonsense. I'm not. That's not going to bother me at all. I remember that. You told me.
Okay. Yeah. So that's the idea. You understand? So you have to. Person has to know, right? All these things, right? All these. Right.
So it's the Torah is like a seesaw when it comes to husband and wife. You have to be good to her. You have to satisfy her.
Yes.
Yet she has to adapt your ways.
Right.
When you get married, so it's
a balance, right?
It's a balance. I see.
It's give and take, you know, whatever, right? That's the idea. Yes, for sure. So this is a lot of the interesting points, right? Also, there's another thing. Somebody just asked me a different question, which is what they asked me. When you're using your sink, right, for Passover, you know, so the sink also, right, is metal, whatever, or it's made some. The older ones are made like out of, you know, like porcelain.
Yeah.
You know, the older models.
Yeah.
They don't make them like that anymore. In the old days,
they have the coating, the porcelain
coating. Right. So the question was like this, right? That does a person have to be so particular about, because the custom is like this, right? When they kasher. How do you kasher a sink? A sink has all kinds of junk in there. So you got to kasher, you know, make it nice and clean. Make sure there's no chametz there. So the custom is what we do is we take like boiling water, you know, like that was baked, boiled on the fire, and we pour it all over, like, you know, to kasher the sink, right? So what is that supposed to do, right? That if any taste got absorbed in there from hot foods.
Is that more potent than dishwashing liquid? Water? Is that
well, dishwashing liquid takes care of the outside, you see, but this goes inside as well a little bit. You know what I mean? It's able to go inside, you know, a little bit penetrate. That's the idea. You know what I mean? So we want to get that taste out of there. You know, that taste which is absorbed in there. This is the reason why the custom is to do that. But you know what they told me was like you have to be so particular about it that where some of the, you know, water, like, you know, got cold and came back on. You know, this kind of all kinds of questions like this they asked me. So I said, no, you don't have to be so particular about this. That maybe, you know, some cold water came back on and, you know, got you know, like the taste came back to the sink, you know, things like this. That's going a little bit too far, you know, all these things. So I want to explain to you, right, why that is. What's going on over here, right? Why does a person have to pour boiling water over the sink, right? Because what happens is that sometimes a person takes a pot which was boiling on the fire and he pours it out into the sink. It happens sometimes, you know what I mean? Things like this. He pours it out. It's old already, whatever. It's spoiled, whatever. He pours it out. So what happens is that hot water that gets poured into the sink penetrates the taste, goes inside the walls of the sink. This is what happens. When something is very hot, it can penetrate. This is the reason, by the way, why we take hot baths, right? Not cold. You know why? Because the hot water can penetrate the skin as well. It penetrates the pores much better. So it gets you much more clean. This is the reason why. So hot water is able to penetrate. You understand? This is the idea. So what happens like this, right? That it penetrates. So now we want to pour out hot water in order to remove that penetration that got into there. This is the idea. You know what I mean? Just like it went in with hot water, it comes out also with hot water. We take it out also like that. So this is the idea. So the truth is, right, but if a person, let's say, didn't do that, let's say he didn't kasher the sink with hot water. He forgot to do it, let's say, right? And then he started to use it on Pesach, right? So the question is, does that make anything into forbidden or anything like that, right? So the answer is no, nothing becomes forbidden. What's the reason why? Because what happens is like this, right? It's something very interesting in halakha, another interesting concept. I'm racking your brains over here a little bit, right? But it's actually a very interesting concept, which is what? That when one taste goes into a certain surface, right? Whether it's a pot or a sink, a taste penetrated into there, right? Went in there. So as we said, right, now the concern is that maybe it'll come back out and I'll eat something from there, from that taste. This is a concern. But the truth is, right here with the sink situation, there's no concern about that. Why is that? What's the reason why? I'll tell you something very interesting. So we have this rule, right, in halakha, which is not barnat. You know what that means? You got to follow closely, right, a little bit. It's like a little bit of a tricky equation over here. So it goes like this, right, that there's not barnat means that what? It's a taste which is from the taste. In other words, a secondary taste. There's a primary taste, which is the first food that penetrated into the surface. That's the first taste. But now, if it comes back out by some kind of hot water or some kind of hot surface, whatever it is, it came back out of there. So what happens is it's called not barnat. What does that mean? It's a secondary taste already. Why is that? The first taste was a taste that was absorbed inside the walls of the pot. Now, that taste which comes out of there now, right, when you pour something hot in there, that's a secondary taste. So you know why I tell you secondary? The secondary taste is not as potent as the primary taste. It's weaker, So therefore, the rabbi said, right, that not barnat is allowed. The secondary taste is already permitted. You know what I mean? So when does that apply? That applies where the original taste, the first taste, was permitted itself. So here also it's permitted. Why is that? Because if there was chametz that went inside, the taste of chametz went inside the sink, and it penetrated in there, at that time when it went inside, it was permitted. You know why? Because it was before Pesach. So since it was before Pesach, and it penetrated and was permitted, so now the secondary taste which came out of there itself is also permitted. That's halakha. So therefore the truth is, right, that if a person didn't kasher the sink and used it like that, there's no problem. You know why? Because secondary taste cannot anymore make anything forbidden. It's not forbidden anymore, the secondary taste. Not barnat, right? It's a taste, the son of the taste, right? That's what the son of the taste. Right. So that's the idea. So this is another concept here, that we Sfardim are lenient regarding these things, because this is the halakha, but Ashkenazim are stringent. They have all kinds of stringent customs. This is also one of them. Right. So all these things that we just mentioned, the Ashkenazim are more stringent than we are, right? They're not lenient on any of these things that we just mentioned. We are lenient, and they're not lenient. You understand? Is there
a story behind that? Why? Or
it's a good question. So you know what the reason is?
Or it's just they became more stringent as time went along. It's more of a man-made.
I'll tell you something interesting about that, right? By the way, which is that one. That the truth is that this Jewish people have two departments in there, right? Two compartments and departments. Mm. What does that mean? We have the side which is the side of din. Mm. We have the side which is the side of chesed, mercies, right? So as the Chazal tell us, right, that Avraham Avinu, our patriarch, was the side of chesed. He was a kind man. His trait was kindness. You know what I mean? But Yitzchak was din, right? His son. Yitzchak was din, was judgment. You know what I mean? Yaakov was a mixture of both of them. In other words, he had that perfect balance, between. You need that balance. That's the whole thing. When you're balanced, that makes you perfect. A little bit from here, a little bit from there. When you need, you take from here.
So
You
what?
need from take from
Yaakov
there.
had no mercy when he was making the judgment.
He had a perfect balance.
Yaakov,
right? Yitzhak. You're talking about Yitzhak,
yeah,
right?
Yitzhak.
So Yitzhak was very strong dinim, right? That's what it says in the Ruach Kadosh. Not only din, right? Not only judgment, but very, very severe judgment. You know what I mean? So the Jewish people, we have also this element of very strong judgment. This it's also part of our people. We need that also, by the way. It's a need that we have. So a person should never, denigrate any of these things, right? Oh, why are they like this and why are we like that? Everybody has a purpose, you know what I mean? Everybody has a.
So what are you saying, that the Ashkenazim are tough sons of bitches, or?
So what we're saying is like this, right? That the Ashkenazim really, right, have more side of din, judgment. You know what I'm saying? There are actually sources about this regarding this issue, right? First of all, we have into the Talmud we have Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel, right? Two schools of thought in the rabbis they had, right? So Bet Hillel was the side of mercy. They were more lenient.
Yes.
People who are lenient more in halacha, this is more mercy, more side of mercy.
Yes.
We're not talking about people who are like too lenient, like reform.
Why
we're not talking about that.
Why are the American Ashkenazim so liberal then? Why do they?
That's a different story. That's a different story. But before we get to that, right? Let's talk about the religious people, right? That's a different issue.
Whatever, I see. Okay.
Right, because that's a different discussion.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
it's the secular.
Yeah, it's secular.
Usually
Right, exactly.
leans that way.
That's also very actually it fits in very well to the narrative. Also, what you're talking about, I'll try to explain to you. So it says right that Bet Shammai was the side of din; they were stringent, and Bet Hillel was lenient. They were the side of Chesed. So we have these two schools of thought all the way going through all the way history, in the Jewish people. Right? We have also right as we said the Ashkenazim and Sephardim, same thing. If you look in the Shulchan Aruch, right, the laws of the Jewish people, the Ashkenazim are usually more stringent than the Sephardim, about 80% of the time. So you see, it's a trend. It's not like something which is like just isolated. So the truth is, right, that says the Chidah, right, one of the great rabbis of 250 years ago, he writes that the truth is that the Ashkenazim are a side of din and the Sephardim are the side of chesed, kindness, So this is actually true until this day, this whole thing. We need both these qualities, in the Jewish people. Without that, the world cannot exist. We need both of them. But nevertheless, right, that's the Sephardim are much more lenient in the issue of Pesach. They're much more lenient regarding these things.
Thank God.
By the way, regarding what you asked about, right? Why is it that many of them are secular? This kind of thing. So the truth is, right, that sometimes what happens is a person has to know one thing, right? That he shouldn't become overly religious, a person, like too much, fanatical. Because what happens is that when you tax somebody too much, you say, look, don't do this, don't do that. And really, in halacha, it's allowed to do these things. But you're telling him, don't do it, So what happens is that from the extremity of all these things, he sometimes abandons the religion altogether. He says like, oh, it's too heavy for me, it's too much for me. I can't take all this stuff, So the truth is that there are some rabbis, Ashkenazim themselves, who wrote this, the Rabbi Yaakov Emdin. He writes in one of his books that even though he himself was Ashkenazi, he said it's not so good that the Ashkenazim are always so stringent. You know why? Because sometimes what happens is that because they put too much pressure on the people, it makes them go to the side of the secular. It makes them abandon altogether the religion. This is also sometimes can be too extreme. So the truth is, right, a person has to know there's limitations to everything. That's why Shlomo Melech, right, King Solomon, he said, Al tiyeh tzadik harbeh, don't be too overly righteous. That's what he says, right? King Solomon, the wisest of men, says, don't be overly righteous. Don't go too far. There are limitations. What does that mean? If a person wants to be stringent on himself, that's one thing. It's own personal decision. You think that this is the best way for you? Great, fantastic, right? We have nothing against that. But don't tell the community this is halacha. That's something else. You have to tell them the truth. You know what I mean? This is the idea. So a person has to know, right, that there's halacha and then there's chasidut. There's saintliness. Two different things. When people come to you, simple Jewish folk, Jewish people, don't tell them now all kinds of chasidut, stringencies, chumrot, don't do this, everything is forbidden, everything is asur, everything is don't do, everything is this, you're if you don't do it, you're a heretic, you're a loser, this blah blah blah, nothing, that's it, you're lost case. That's what I mean. When a person goes too far like this, sometimes the people they start to abandon the religion altogether, because you go too heavy on them. So therefore, right, there has to be a balance, right? Yaakov Avinu, that's exactly what he was, right? Yaakov Avinu had the perfect balance between din and chesed. You know what we call that? In Kabbalah we call that tiferet. Tiferet means like you take from both sides and you'll find that perfect common ground, perfect, middle ground. That's the idea. This is the best way that a Talmid Chacham should be, the best way a Jew should be, the best way a tzaddik should be, Take from both sides and come up with something really, nice and presentable. This is the way it should be, right? Okay, I guess we'll stop here because we started a little bit late, right? And
10 o'clock,
we had Sheva Brachot, Baruch Hashem, we were Zoche. So we did the mitzvah of giving simcha to Chatan and Kala. And Bezrat Hashem, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And I'll see you next week.
Yes.
God bless, all the best.